or what inspired you to become an artist and an educator?
I think life is full of those inspirational people if you're lucky. A friend, Thompson Highway, a playwright, Canadian Cree guy, said, if you can, fall in love every day. And I thought that was good advice. I had an important professor when I was an undergraduate. College didn't really seem like it was in the realm of possibility for me. I got a chance to go on an athletic scholarship. When it was time to drop out and my dad had told me I would fail and would come home, I just assumed that's what would happen. And then a professor took interest in me, Kim Harris. And we discovered I had a reading disability and that I was changing my words around. And so he thought perhaps studying acting would be useful, particularly Shakespeare, where you couldn't make up the words, which I have a tendency to do, which is okay, because that feeds that poet thing you were talking about earlier. So Kim Harris changed my life. He was a young professor at Jewell College when I was an undergraduate.
You are known, at least according to all of your many beautiful nomination letters, for willingly taking people on, like as you speak of Professor Harris, Kim Harris, doing for you. So I'm wondering what your philosophy is for bringing people in.
I think you meet people where they are. We were talking about Dan Carter a bit earlier. Dan said that what he noticed when he was working with me is I treated everybody like they were already in the profession. I think as a young actor I had a lot of talent, not a lot of craft, but people thought I would make it. And so they treated me with a lot of deference, and they didn't make fun of me very often for what I didn't know. And the people who did belittled me in pretty strong ways, and I thought, well, I don't want to be that person. So the idea of meeting people where they are, seeing them, and I think that's core in acting, seeing who you're in the scene with, what there is to play.
I wonder how much for you that impacted not just taking people in and taking people on, but the way you make new theater, the way in which you direct. How has that those challenges, that doubt that people, it seemed, inspired in you until someone actually saw you for who you were, how does that help you craft new theater?
Well, I'm almost always working with established people and people who are really new to the art form, whether it's at the university or at Native Voices. I'll meet people, particularly from reservations, who it's really difficult to look anyone in the eye. When I first started introducing myself as an actor, I'd say, "Hi, my name's Reinholz and I'm an actor." And they'd say, "What?" So I had to learn how to put on a persona even to stand in the room. And I recognized that really quick in young performers. I try to name it, talk about why it feels insecure, and then how quickly can we move past that, because until you move past that, everything is limited. And I think so much of being an artist is that sometimes I think as teachers we label things and tell people what's wrong with them and are really clear about what's wrong with them. And that's such a negative way of teaching. And so I like to name what we need to change and make better. And then how quick can we do that?
What changes in the theater during your career have excited you?
Hey, Indians on stage.
Right? Yep.
That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah, it's been fun to be part of. Even as Mary Catherine Nagel wrote something called Instead of Red Face for Howl Around. And one of her things that she wrote is she wondered if in her lifetime she would see plays by Native Americans at major well-resourced theaters. And of course she had one of the first ones just a few years later. So I think that's this big significant change, that stories by Native people have value. In the beginning, perhaps because of exoticism. And could you perform Indian for us so we could understand it? And could you tell us a story so we understand all Indians? And now I think this idea of what's missing in the conversation, what does it mean to be an American? What are the untold stories? How did we get in this shape we have found ourselves in leadership in the country? And these polarized, that's leading to catastrophe. I mean, it's not that I'm mad at these leaders. People are dying. We had someone run for office saying he could shoot people in the street, and there is blood on their hands. And I don't say his, their. There's a whole group of people that think it's charming to belittle, and we need to tell the rest of the stories, and that's our job as artists, tell the rest of the stories.
You answered my next question, but that's okay. I'm gonna ask it just in a little bit of a
Please.
different way. So with all of these current stressors and the contemporary situation in the U.S. and globally, how do you advise that young artist who isn't yet established, right, to tell that story, the other half of the story, when there is such warranted and abounding fear?
Study history. This is not the first time we've been here. It can get much more grotesque. And should we do nothing, it will. So standing on the sidelines and living in one's privilege and safety is becoming less and less of an option for people. So how do you take action that is not violent, that's not demeaning to other people, that changes the narrative? That's the question these folks are facing. And you know, you look at what young people want from college, it's very different than 2 decades ago. They all wanted careers and money and houses. And you know, so many people are giving up a chance of a home for 10 to 20 years so they can pay for tuition. What do they get? What's the reciprocity? And there are a few people that really desperately want that Wall Street life, but most people find it repugnant. And so what's the balance? How will life work? And we're engaged in that. We're lucky. We're engaged in this.
I think it's wonderful. You know, I miss so desperately the liberal arts endeavor and heart of education, which is to develop whole citizens, whole thinking, critical citizens, right at its very core. And we are now in a corporatized academic environment where, you know, a student says, what job can I get with this? And I like to say, anyone you want, because it's not about, I'm not here to get you a job, I'm here to educate you.
And give them windows into the world. How are they going to put things together? Don't just repeat what I think. How does it work for you? What's your perspective look like? How can you articulate that? How can you gather information to support your ideas? How can you be bigger than yourself?
How are you going to stage the story, right, if you don't know what's happening? What stories are you interested in telling next?
I think I live a balance of tradition and contemporary. So I'm always hearkening back to traditional elements of Native culture, Native society. Seeing Native people on stage is a huge change in the American theater. I hope it's not a blip. I hope it's the beginning of a trend. I hope there's an array of stories that come out of this. These are the changes I want to see. At Oregon Shakespeare Festival, we did Off the Rails. Bill Rauch directed. It had 7 Native characters. Having 7 Native actors in the company doubled the number of Native actors they had had in the 82 years prior. Now they have 10 actors in the company playing across the spectrum of classical theater. The idea that, why do we do the classics? Why are we devoted to Shakespeare? You know, Shakespeare could be a colonizing tool. So why are we devoted to it? Well, we have to reinterpret the classics to look at the parallels of what's happened before and what's going on today. I want to see the rest of the country in those stories on a consistent basis. Not that it's an anomaly that a woman plays Hal or Hotspur. You know, that these things are important. Women have been warriors in any number of ways. We value, I mean, war is going to move dramatically anyway. We're not going to be on the field hand to hand nearly as much as we'll be at the computer. So, you know, who's going to prosecute those actions? We better involve all the brain power we have, otherwise we'll be left behind.
Absolutely.
Native people know this. Well, you know, it's funny because I'm a playwright and I have all these pieces that are just starting. I have a piece that's almost ready to go out there. So it's a young woman, she's an artist from a small town. she's got to come home for a quick birthday party with her mom, and her mom has 3 gifts, and one is she's dying. And she has to figure out, who is she? Is she a career? Is she a daughter? Is she her own person? Will she be co-opted by the ideas of the small town, and is there any freedom in art anyway? So those are the kinds of stories I look at. That particular story, she's raised by 2 moms who didn't always claim being 2 moms. It was a mom and a friend. You know, and I think that's a big part of where people live. The vanguard's out in front talking about what's possible, but I think so many people in the country feel left behind, and I think as artists we can be culpable in making people feel left behind. How do we talk to people where they are instead of insisting that they be at our level of enlightenment, which usually is bullshit?
Thank you so much.
Sure, Ann.